front seat so he could feel like he was driving. But I think she realized it was a mistake when he started laying into the horn and yelling at other cars. Honk.
Okay.
It was cool being out on the
Guys, alright.
open road and all.
Bye.
But after a while, everything started to kind of look the same.
Sir,
So, me and Roderick went on our gadgets to pass the time.
basically,
After an hour or
I
so,
made a
Mom said
survival
we'd had
world
enough
a bit
screen
ago,
time for the day, and we
yeah.
needed to be off our electronics.
still here, so I'm gonna record a
When Mom tells us
survival
we've had enough screen time,
world
we'll take a
video.
break. But as soon as
tell
she
you.
stops paying attention,
Then I'll be
we'll get
commentating.
right back on.
This is
And
my
after a
character.
while, she'll get tired of fighting us and just give up. Which is what we thought would happen today. It turned out,
Okay, let's go.
Mom wasn't
Alright.
messing around on this trip. When we got back on our
what-
devices,
what's
she
this?
put them in a clear plastic box that had a timer on top.
This is gonna take a while. Never mind.
The second I
fast.
saw that thing, I knew what it was. Because I'd seen the ads in one of Mom's parenting magazines. The Vault. And screen time debates for good. Fits phones and most tablets. Bulletproof glass. Set timer from 10
see
minutes
what I can do.
to 10 years.
By the way, I'm also
Mom set the
watching,
timer for 2 hours, then went back to her seat up front. Whoever made
what's
that
it
thing
called?
knew what they were
Why are you going
doing,
with the
because
kid?
me and Roderick couldn't figure out how to crack it.
The kid.
Mom handed us some
No?
activities she created for the trip and said they should keep us busy for a
Michael,
while.
if you're watching,
But it wasn't
this
that
now,
much fun playing wildlife bingo when we
Oh, my
couldn't
tools
even
are out there.
identify half the
No.
animals we saw along the side of the road.
Alright, this
And
is
there
my
wasn't a
world.
square for roadkill.
There's some crazy
After another
deer,
hour or two of driving,
Well, not
Mom and Dad started looking for places to
but
stop.
I reinvested.
There were some signs for scenic
go.
attractions. So, Dad pulled over at the exit for a place called Culpepper's Ravine.
Alright, jump.
Mom got all excited because she said we were like
I said, "Hey, Bob."
explorers who were about to see something
Easy.
new. But unfortunately, some other explorers beat us to it because the camping lot was totally full. We couldn't find any parking, so we had to move along.
Alright,
And it was the exact
Hey,
same
Val,
story
I mean,
for the
Fred.
next 3 places we tried to stop.
yes.
I know I should feel lucky to be alive at a time when there's modern medicine and smartwatches and peanut butter filled pretzels. But sometimes I wish I was born a little sooner, so I had a chance to actually discover
Why
something.
are there so many
Like a
beehives?
giant waterfall.
For free beehives.
Because when you find something new,
That's rare.
name it
No,
after you.
that's so rare.
But by now, everything worth
Beehives?
finding has already been discovered. And you wouldn't really want your name on any of the stuff that's left over.
That check
Greg's
isn't loaded.
Ditch. One time,
Alright,
the
let's keep
planetarium in our town had a
Okay.
fundraiser, and if you paid 10
Let's
bucks,
just go.
you'd get a certificate that said a planet in some faraway galaxy was named after you.
Oh.
So Mom paid the 10 bucks, and I still have the certificate hanging on the wall in my bedroom. Planet H1-B9932 in the Osiris galaxy will hereby be known as Planet Greg.
What?
But when Mom filled out the form, I wish it was my first
I don't
and
care. Why are
last
you
name.
so
Because
embarrassing?
now, some
Why are you so
random Greg
embarrassing?
could get to
In
my
the
planet
middle of a
before I
YouTube
do
video.
and say it's his.
Stop.
Dad said our mistake
fighting
was that we were
with my
going to places
father right
everyone
now.
knew about. And if we got off the main road,
Yeah, now you're
we might
officially
find
not in a
something
YouTube video because
special.
this has no face
So
cam.
we took a detour and kept our eyes peeled for anything that looked like it was worth stopping.
Yes, I know that, sir.
And sure enough,
No.
after we took a few more turns, we found a crystal clear lake with no
Yeah, that's my
alien
brother saying,
sight.
happy
The
birthday!
air
He
conditioning in
wants to do
Uncle
happy
Gary's
birthday
camper wasn't
on the
working,
50th
and everyone was ready to cool off. So we got into our bathing suits and took a dip
This
in
dude
the
loves
lake.
doing happy birthday, guys. I don't
It
know
took a second before I
why.
realized something wasn't right.
I don't understand
I
why
noticed
this man
a
wants to do happy
million
birthday.
shimmering objects
What?
just beneath the surface, and my mind went right to piranhas.
Oh, a drone,
I'm
nice.
pretty sure everyone else's did too, judging by how quickly we all started swimming to shore.
Okay.
I was almost to the
I'm
shore
recording a
when I
YouTube
felt
video.
a bunch of tiny mouths
Ow.
I thought I was being
my
eaten
hair.
alive.
I do what
And by the
I
time I made it out of the water, I was surprised to be
What?
in
I'm
one piece.
confused. Why is there a goat down
Almost
here?
in one piece. I had a scab on my knee when I got into the water, but by the time I got out, it was
Tell us
totally
happy
Happy
birthday.
Everybody come, everybody come.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Like we were swimming in.
Happy
was a fish
birthday,
hatchery.
dear Cat.
I
Happy
those guys were
birthday.
not trespassing, and we didn't want to stick around to find out.
Mom, there's no such thing as a
Piled
return
into the
gift.
camper, and Dad stepped on the gas.
See?
The next time Mom makes fish for dinner, I'm definitely gonna check the package to see where they came from first. The crazy thing is, the fish hatchery wasn't the last place we got chased away from today. We tried parking the camper in a meadow so we could get out and enjoy the view while we ate. But it turned out to be somebody's farm. And the farmer chased us off his property with a pitchfork.
Guys, this was my
We
survival
finally
world,
found a
but
field that didn't look like it belonged to anyone. So that's where we stopped for the night. The sleeping situation wasn't great. The kitchen table converted into a bed, which is where Mom and Dad slept.
let's keep
I
going.
wasn't crazy about the idea of eating breakfast off the spot where Dad slept in his boxer shorts. I had to share the loft above the cabin with Roderick,
At least I'll get
which
back to
wasn't
make
much of an
golden apples.
improvement on our deal in Grandma's basement.
Hold on.
The only person who had any space to himself was Manny. He turned one of the cabinets in the kitchenette into a little apartment,
Trader?
and his setup had a
Hi.
light, a poster, and a tiny bed. It was actually pretty sweet.
Oh, there's the golem I've been wondering.
While Mom and Dad
Imagine
were
I
getting
die
ready
on
for
episode
bed,
1.
I found out a major downside of the camper. The bathroom walls were paper thin, and with the engine off, you could hear everything happening in there. And trust me, no kid wants to hear his mother's bathroom noises.
What do you have to offer, buddy?
I can't hear anything that's happening right now.
I'm broke. I'm broke. I used to be an Emerald
Thursday.
millionaire. Railroad.
It turns out the place we stopped for the night was a public park.
Garage.
Little League practice started first thing in the morning, and we were parked right over the pitcher ground.
Oh god.
Luckily,
This is
we were able to
laggy.
take off before some kid broke a
Laggy.
taillight with a line drive. Mom said she didn't want a repeat of yesterday
Are you good?
and asked everyone
Okay.
to think of something we could
I
do
see
that was
something.
guaranteed fun.
Someone drowning?
And that's when I remembered a billboard I saw the day before. The billboard was for this
I
place
remember.
called the Family Adventure Center.
Don't spit
Usually,
at me and
whenever
saw
the word
that face.
family is part of something, it's a warning to stay away. But the pictures on the sign, all-terrain vehicles,
I know
whitewater rafting, rock climbing, and zip lining, made me think this place could be different. We had to backtrack about 2 hours to find the Adventure Center, but it didn't really matter since we weren't really headed anywhere to begin with. I have to say, this place was pretty cool. There were a million activities, and I wanted to do them
Okay, I
all.
can't hit him for some
But
reason.
everything had an age and height requirement.
Yes.
And Manny wasn't tall enough to do any good activities.
Okay, place.
The
You guys
only
can have
activity
that.
Manny was big enough
Easy.
for was the fun float, where you drifted down the river in inner
Easy.
tubes. So,
Alright, guys.
that's what Mom signed us up
I just
for.
realized I'm in a flower forest.
I really
Pumpkin, I
wanted
already
to do
have some
something more
pumpkins.
exciting, like rock climbing.
Guys,
But
if I
Mom
went
was
into
dead
game
set on
mode,
us
my
all
inventory
doing
would
something
be
as a
much more
family. Mom
organized.
said the fun float would be
But I'm not
relaxing.
ready to organize it.
And
yet.
after we put on our life
Wait.
jackets, we grabbed
That's
the
a cave
cooler
system,
and a
right?
few other things
Hold
from
on.
the camper to
That's
take
it.
with us on the river.
Okay.
After our experience with the fish
just
farm
realized
yesterday, I wasn't crazy
What
about getting
is
into
a
the water
cave?
again. But there were a bunch of other people doing the fun float too, and I figured
That is a
if
cave.
there were any piranhas in the
Leads into
river,
a mountain.
they'd go for them before
If
they'd
it
go
goes
for
deep
me.
enough, I could potentially find
I have to
an
admit
ancient city in deep
that
dark.
once we got going, it was kind of relaxing. Maybe even a little too
It's
relaxing.
almost night.
Roderick fell asleep while Dad answered work
Okay, I think this
emails
can go to
and
a
Mom
deep
checked in with Manny's pediatrician.
I'm probably
His
gonna
stools
die.
seem a little runny, Should I add more fiber to his
I
diet?
didn't even place it.
So no one was
How
really
did I
paying
not place
attention
it?
when we hit a shallow part in the river and came to a complete stop.
Okay.
We had to take our tubes out of the water,
This is
and it wasn't fun walking across a bunch of sharp rocks in our bare feet. Once the river got deeper, we put the tubes back in the water. But my inner tube must have got punctured in the shallow part because it was losing air.
I see a creeper.
So I took Manny's tube, and we emptied the ice out of the cooler so he could use that. I thought the trip was going to take 20 minutes, but it had already been 2 hours with no end in sight.
I'm scared.
And we really slowed down when we got stuck behind a big group of people jamming up the river. I hit a warm spot in the water, and I've been in enough baby pools to know what that meant. So, when the river got wider, I paddled my tube around those guys to try and get out of their wake.
Alright, hold on.
Unfortunately, I went a little too far and ended up in a part of the river where the water was really rough.
How did I not do
And a
that?
few seconds later, I got tossed from my inner tube.
No duh.
It was actually pretty scary.
Guys, I've only
The
seen
water
Phantom
was moving
2
fast,
times
so I
yet.
pointed my feet downstream to make sure I didn't crack my head open on a rock.
Alright,
I
what's
called out for
difficult?
help,
Why are you...
but the people around me had their music up too loud
I
to
did
even notice.
nothing.
Help!
Alright.
My family tried to
You.
save me, but it turns out
No,
they're
you!
totally
Not
useless
me.
in an
You.
emergency. Dad was trying to paddle to me with a stick.
Okay,
All
the
Mom
cave
managed to
goes
do
deeper
was
into
tie
the
some
mountain
towels
and-
together. Manny threw a water bottle at my
emerald.
head, and Roderick
No, not
was
yet.
still sleeping.
Nadie una
Up
calle.
ahead, people were pulling
where's
their
the
inner
keeper?
tubes out of the river in the landing area, so I tried to paddle myself over there. But the water was moving too fast, and I was getting pulled
I hope it's not
downstream.
a skeleton.
My family got out of the river,
With my
and
luck,
Dad
it's
was
gonna be a
yelling and
skeleton.
pointing at something near me. That's when I saw a
better
big
come
branch hanging out over the
Yeah, we
water,
gotta put it.
and I grabbed it.
Alright, I'm gonna keep
For
my
a second,
shields on for
I
a
thought everything was
moment.
going to be okay. Then I noticed
No.
something drifting away from
Why?
me and realized it was my bathing suit.
Huh.
A lifeguard from the Adventure Center
Spiders
started
are-
wading out after me with a life preserver. And I knew if I just kept hanging on to that branch,
Yes, I
she'd
made it.
rescue me.
Deep
But all I
dark.
could think of were the people in the landing area who were about to see me without a bathing
Alright,
suit.
perfect. I found a deep
And
dark.
Roderick was already recording me with his phone.
Is he a
So
skull
I
catalyst?
decided the best move was to let go and take my chances. Luckily, the water wasn't as rocky downstream, but it was
Okay,
still
I'm going
moving
deeper.
fast. By the time I was able to drag myself onto the shore,
No.
I must have been a quarter of a mile from the landing area. And I never did find my bathing suit. But thankfully, I found the cooler to cover me until I got back to the camper.
Who's called
Friday.
That's not good.
Last night,
I
everyone
don't
in my
wanna
family
encounter the
agreed
warden
that our
today.
trip was off to a pretty terrible
I know
start.
hose break them a
But we
lot
couldn't
faster,
decide what to do next.
But I really
I
don't want to
thought
encounter
we should
the
just admit
warden
this trip
today.
was a mistake and go back to Grandma's. But Dad said
still
we
doing
couldn't
good.
turn around now because
Why?
we hadn't done any actual camping yet. Dad said there was a national forest a few hours away, and if we camped there, we could
Okay.
stay in one place for the rest of the trip
Okay.
and relax for a change.
Did you start
I
smelling
wasn't
the
crazy
grass?
about going off on our own, but I knew how
Alright,
the rest of the summer was
no
going to
more
play
deep
out
dark.
if
I'm
we went back to
searching-
Grandma's
I'm
basement
basically
now.
just trying to find
We would just be pretend camping around Mom's homemade
I'm just trying to
cardboard cutout
find a-
campground. I didn't feel great about camping in the
the
wilderness,
only thing I'm
but
trying to
Dad
find
said
out
if
is
we got into any trouble, there were rangers who could help us out,
is a
and that made me
is
feel a little better.
agency.
So
And
we
I
spent
hope
the
that
night in the
mobs
parking
don't
lot at the
spawn
Adventure
in
Center,
Deep
and
Dark
first
Mountain
thing in the
anymore.
morning, we headed
They
for
used
the
to.
National Forest. The ranger at the entrance told us it hadn't rained in a few weeks, so the risk of fire was really high. Then she gave Dad a map and a pamphlet with tips on how to camp responsibly. The forest was big, so it took a while for us to get to our campsite, and we didn't see a single human being on our way in. The campsite was actually really nice. There was a lot of
Guys,
space
being
for the
honest, my
camper,
favorite block
and we
in
were
Minecraft,
right
I
next
think,
to a
is
little
Skull.
stream. After we set up our hammock and
know why,
chairs,
it's just so
we kicked back
space-like.
and enjoyed being out in nature.
By the way, if you didn't know,
At
Smoke
least
Games can
most of us
stop
did.
lava flow and water
Roderick
flow.
listened to music while I played video
I
games.
don't really know why.
After a few minutes, Mom asked what our plan was, and Dad said this was the plan. Mom said we couldn't just sit around all day, and we needed to do something
I'm trying to
active,
get out
like
of here.
go on a nature hike or something. But that sounded like a lot of work to us guys,
This is
especially
actually so
after a
hard.
long drive. So Mom said if we were all gonna laze around, she was gonna put our electronics in the vault for the rest of the trip. And that was enough to get us
Yes, I
moving.
got it.
Mom pulled out the map and found a trail that was nearby. And before we headed off on the hike, she told everyone to fill up our canteens and put on bug spray. But I was a lot more worried about bears than bugs. I remembered that the guy at the camping store said if you saw a bear out in nature, the best thing you could do was make noise to scare it away. Luckily, Uncle Gary left some pots and pans under the sink in the camper. But I wasn't going to wait until we spotted a bear to start making a racket.
Okay.
Clang,
Please,
clang.
please. Okay.
Everyone
There
got
it
annoyed
is.
with me pretty quick.
The
And Mom
open
told me I
world.
needed to bring the cookware back to the camper.
Oh man.
She said I could catch up with them farther down the trail. And I was actually fine with that, because that stuff was pretty
That
heavy
scared
anyway.
me.
Plus,
I
I
actually
was
got
starting to
scared
wonder
for
if
a
the
moment.
noise might actually attract bears. Because whenever I hear pots and pans, I'm thinking, dinner. After I put the cookware back in the camper, I turned around and got back on the trail.
Alright, I got
I
scared.
thought if I
of it,
hurried, it
honest.
might take me 10 minutes to reconnect with
Go.
everyone. But then, I ran into a problem. The trail
Guys,
split, and I didn't know which way my
lost.
family went.
I don't know where to go.
I figured
I'm lost.
the odds were 50-50,
I'm
so
lost.
I headed left. But I walked for a long time without finding them, and figured I
Okay,
must have
I'm
picked the
actually
wrong path.
lost.
So I went back to the place where the fork in the trail was,
Okay, where's some iron
and that's
ore?
where I
don't
hit
want it.
another
For now.
snag. I was all turned around and
Okay.
couldn't remember which path was the one I hadn't
The
taken
way
yet,
out.
and which one led back to
I
the
want to
camper.
find a way
And I couldn't
out.
tell which was which because to me, every tree and rock looked the same.
I can't see
That's
much of
when I
anything.
started to get worried.
Yes.
I remembered the guy at the camping store saying that
Civilization.
sometimes bears will use human trails because it's easier than walking through the brush. So, I really didn't feel good about hanging out in the middle of an intersection.
Okay, I'll get my
I've
boat
read that a
out.
bear's sense of smell is 1,000 times
I
better
think
than a
something's-
human's. So when I pulled out the container of lip balm I had in my pocket and saw that it was called organic honeybee lip balm,
Why?
I practically started hyperventilating. I decided to get off the trail, which turned out to be a dumb
the
move,
warden and
because once I was off the path, I couldn't find my way back.
Under
My
attack.
mind started racing, and I thought about what would happen if I was lost for good.
Alright, I know the way
I've
out.
read stories about human beings
I just
who got
don't
cut
know.
off from civilization
I'm gonna get
and were
lost, I know
raised by
that.
wolves. I didn't know if there were any wolves
Oh, no, thank you.
in
I
this
don't want to go
forest,
down there.
but there were plenty of squirrels. And I
Wait a
didn't
minute.
want to live the
That's
rest of my
cobblestone.
life
That's cobblestone.
raised by
I know what
squirrels.
that is. That's a
Chitter,
dungeon.
chitter. Chitter, chitter.
Okay.
Luckily,
I have no idea
my
what kind of
family
dungeon
found me
this
before
is.
things could get too crazy, because in another hour or two, I might have been too far gone and become a woods person eating berries from bushes. Gobble. Smack. When we got back to camp, Mom asked Roderick to check me for ticks, since I'd been off the
Oh
trail.
god, it's a zombie
He
spawn.
looked me over and told me I had a huge tick right in the
Stay
middle
away.
of my back. Roderick said the
Stay
tick must have been on me for a
away.
while because it looked like it was about to burst.
Yes.
And I almost passed out
I'm
when he showed me the
so
picture he took
scared.
on his phone.
Who's dead?
It turns out
What do I have?
it was just a joke. And the picture was
Okay.
something Roderick found online.
At least I didn't
But
die.
even after I
Ooh, music
knew
does.
it was
No
a joke,
thanks.
I still felt like something was in the middle of my back for the rest of the day. Mom said everyone should take a shower, since it had been 2 days and we were starting to stink.
Okay,
Roderick
I'm
went first,
definitely getting out
and he
of
was
this
in there
now.
for at least half an
Scared.
hour. So when it was my
I
turn,
know
there was
I
no
know I
hot
wanted
water
to go
left.
to the deep dark earlier.
Scream!
That's the only reason I came in this cave.
Dad checked
But
the
I
propane
think I
tank
changed
and
my
said
mind.
it was empty.
I don't think I
Which
want to
meant
go.
it was cold
Even though
showers
there's more
from now
dark
on.
to explore.
No one
My
was
brother's
happy
going
about that.
nuts.
Especially Mom.
Oh
I noticed it
my
was
God.
really
Run,
starting
run,
to
run.
smell
Run.
in the bathroom. So I told
Jump,
Dad.
jump.
He said the reason it stunk
Eat.
was because we hadn't emptied out the sewage tank yet. To be honest with you,
Let's
I
go.
didn't even think about what happened to our waste in the camper. Back home, when you flush the toilet, everything gets magically whisked away to some faraway
Hold on, I'm gonna
place.
do this.
But in a camper, you're actually carrying that stuff around with you. If I had known that our waste
Okay.
would be sloshing around below us
That was
beforehand,
lucky.
I'm not sure I would have agreed to go on this trip. Now
Okay,
I was starting to
barely
worry about what
escaped.
happened if the tank overflowed.
How did I do that?
So today,
Okay.
whenever someone
How
looked
did
like
I
they
escape,
needed to go
seriously?
number 2, I tried to talk them into taking it
Let's
somewhere
go.
else.
Let's go. This
I
way.
even provided Mom with some teepee and a shovel.
No.
I
Okay.
guess I should be grateful we live in a time when toilets even
Okay.
exist.
Okay.
Roderick told me that the guy who invented the flushing toilet was named Thomas Crapper. And I don't
I
know
don't
if that's
trust
true
that.
or if it's another one of his jokes. If it's true, I hope that guy
Why
made
is
a
that
ton of
zombie after
money,
me?
because I wouldn't want a body function named after me. Yo, I'm gonna take a Craig. Dad got a fire
You can
going
get
and
me.
cooked some beef stew. He was gonna serve baked beans to go
Are
with
you
it,
a spider
but
or a
Roderick
zombie
left the can
spider?
too close to
Spider.
the fire,
It's
and
almost night
that
again.
was the end of that.
Stay away.
The beans exploded everywhere. Blam!
Okay. Easy.
After dinner, we tied up our trash and hoisted it
How
in
did
a
I
tree
get
with
out
a rope,
alive?
like the guy at the
Dude,
camping
I
store told us
understand.
to. I figured
that another
if
cave?
any bear was smart enough to get at our trash, then they deserved to have it.
It's not a cave. It's a crater.
By now, it was dark out, and
Alright,
Mom
guys.
said we should turn in for the
I
night.
almost died.
But Dad said the best part of
Stupidly
camping
enough.
was sitting around the campfire under the stars. That got Mom all excited, and she tried to get us to join in on a song that she said she learned at summer camp when she was a
Yes,
kid.
made it.
But the rest of us
Finally.
aren't real big on sing-alongs, so we just waited for Mom to wrap it up.
All right.
John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. His name is my name, too.
All right, guys.
After that,
So this is
Dad
gonna
brought
be the
out
end
some
of the video.
marshmallows, and we
Bye,
found some
TFPs.
long sticks.
Wait a minute. It's not the end.
While we were roasting,
I got turned off for recording. Anyway, see ya. Bye.